Thank you, Sister Natasha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today's talk will begin with friends. Aren't they wonderful? I mean, they're the people that we choose to first hang out with whenever we have the opportunity. They are the people we confide in. They are the people we trust. They are the people that seem to have the most influence on us. Sometimes they end up being the people that hurt us the most. But when good and strong friends come together for a good cause, they can achieve something monumental.
When we think of the tragedy of Ashura, there are some things which are foundational and other things which we see emerge. We see courage emerge. We see patience, right? We see suffering, and we see Ashura shed a new light on those qualities. But often we ignore those things which the Ansar already had coming into the Battle of Karbala. These Ansar, for example, already had a complete conviction in their Imam, certainty in the hereafter, without which they wouldn't have been there to begin with, right? Trust, faith, certainty is something the Ansar needed to have and build within themselves before coming to Ashura. And this is precisely why they were willing to sacrifice their lives for their Imam. And perhaps this explains why our Imam makes a bold statement. He claims to have not just mediocre companions, not satisfactory companions, but the best companions that we've seen.
And so we take a lesson from this, that companionship was a necessity. No, not Facebook friends or Twitter followers, but true companionship. Because the believers are brothers and sisters, essentially. And if we want to become the Ansar of Imam Mahdi, Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajan, then I suppose we really have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to kind of lay the foundation of brotherhood and sisterhood? What are we doing in our communities? How do we attain it?
Looking at this topic has been especially interesting for me because I'm notoriously bad at staying in touch with people. Many of you here know that. You know, I was actually so bad at one point that some of my friends nicknamed me Ashab al-Kahf, you know, the sleeper of the cave, because I just go underground and nobody had ever seen me again. And, you know, I thought maybe I was the only person who was, you know, like this or something like that, but I realized that this isn't an anomaly. This is something that often happens to many of us. What really made it hit home for me was when I used to take my nephew out to the park. And, you know, it's a park in a, you know, a massive neighborhood, you know, an afternoon, and there's no kids there at all. He's the only kid. And, you know, when he sees another kid, he gets really excited. It's like the first time he's seen it, you know, he gets really excited just to see another kid there. And, you know, I start thinking to myself, you know, what's happened here? I feel like my generation is honestly like the last generation that has friends. Sorry, so if you're under 21, you don't have real friends. Maybe a few of you, inshallah. Seriously though, the question of friendship and building those bonds between brothers and sisters comes at a time when we are more alone than ever before.
And what's interesting to know is that in 1985, the number of confidants, the people we confide in, the people we share our deepest secrets to, was about 4 people on average. Today, that number has declined. That number is now 2. We have 2 good, strong friends that we tell our deepest secrets that we confide in. And the Prophet ﷺ said that actually at the end of time, the hardest thing to find will be a trustworthy brother or sister. And we're seeing an increasing trend of that. And why, you may ask? Well, one reason that we'll discuss today is perhaps technology. That social media is essentially providing a veneer that we are connected, a veneer that we are together, that we are in brotherhood and sisterhood. But I am here to say that there is absolutely no substitute for person-to-person contact, for that emotional, intellectual, and spiritual bonding that happens when you are face to face. And this is extremely important in creating brotherhood and sisterhood, because there is no email, no Facebook or Twitter or iPad or iPhone that's going to substitute this. So that asks the question, how are we going to build and strengthen our friendships? And psychologists essentially cite 4 main points that we will discuss.
The first is self-disclosure. So you have, believe it or not, to emotionally bond with someone, you have to make yourself vulnerable by revealing something about your personal life. So this could be something like really over the top, like, you know, your dreams, your goals, your aspirations, your deepest struggles. Or it could just be something, you know, a little more than just your public face. Something that happened, you know, at school that deeply affected you, or at work, or whatever it was. The Prophet ﷺ, in fact, encourages this. He says, when one of you likes his brother, his companion or brother, he should let him know. Don't keep it hidden. Let that person know. The other part of this self-disclosure is reciprocation. So basically what happens is that when somebody is trying to bond with another person, what they'll do is they'll test the waters. So they'll let out a small tidbit about something of their personal life to the other person, and we're doing this kind of subconsciously. And what we're expecting is a response from that person to reveal something personal about themselves. And if they don't do that, then what happens is kind of a response where we feel that they're closed off, and then we ourselves kind of withdraw ourselves. Now, obviously, we can't go around sharing everything about ourselves with every single person that we meet. That would be a little weird, right? So, but just giving somebody a little more than just, you know, a formal introduction, just more than discussing purely intellectual topics, goes a long way to actually forming that brotherhood that we see that the Ansar had. The second quality is supportiveness. So, this means receiving the self-disclosure of another person with an appropriate response, you know, with empathy, with wisdom, with understanding. Oftentimes, this requires self-sacrifice and dedication. According to Imam Ali, it says, your brother is the one who does not abandon you in difficulty, does not forget you at the time of trouble, and does not cheat you when you seek his advice. And that's a tall order that does require self-sacrifice when you decide to take somebody as a brother or a sister. The third element is interaction. This means staying in touch beyond just text messaging or, because there's no substitute for person-to-person interaction. When I mentioned earlier that some of my friends used to call me Ashab al-Kahf, right, that's kind of their joke, because of my introverted getaways, there used to be one thing that would pull me back into a social mood. Imam Ali says, don't let your brother be stronger in avoiding you than you are in staying connected to them. And don't be stronger in your harm to him than in your kindness towards him. We have to make it a point sometimes to take that initiative when we see a good brother that you think, this is a person that can help me in my faith journey, to actually take that step and make that initiative and to, you know, kind of pull them in. The fourth element is being positive. Well, it's okay to be down on occasion. And, you know, everybody always has their bad days. Always bringing negative energy to your friends will turn them away very quickly. And the reason for this is that we actually like people who make us feel happy, who give us some sort of emotional commitment back. Ultimately, we value our friendships based on how much value they provide to us. So Imam al-Baqir says, know the love that your brother has for you in his heart for what you harbor of the same in your own heart. So when we need to be proactive in improving our relationship with our fellow brother, the first place is actually to look inward and to change our inner state of being, to remove any traces of hatred, of jealousy, of disgust, and in fact, and instead to cultivate within ourselves love, loyalty, and empathy. And inshallah, we'll see that take root in our fellow brother or sister.
Because ultimately, the point of friendship, especially from an Islamic perspective, is that we become one unit. After all, a friendship is one soul dwelling in two bodies. And this is precisely what we saw on the day of Ashura, when the Ansar were there the nights before, praying and preparing for the battle. We had Zuhair, we had Abbas, we had Habib, we had all these commanders protecting one another, moving in unison, protecting as if they were one body. this brotherhood came when one part of that body would sacrifice itself for the rest of the members. When that one body stood in front of our dearest Imam, not dodging, but rather taking these arrows, moving so that the Imam can maintain his salah. And who is this person, you may ask? Sa'id ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi. Sa'id, the man we remember and commemorate and revere, a man who not only exemplified but holistically understood the criteria of being an Ansar. That brotherhood was a prerequisite to their success. And today, we want to be that Sa'id. We want to be that brother or sister that's going to take an arrow. But this is not the year 61, and this is not Karbala, and none of us are in war. So how are we going to follow in his footsteps? To me, brotherhood and sisterhood is about that time when it was 5 to 1 and my paper was due and I had nothing printed out, and my friend went to the library and printed it and ran to class for me on my behalf.
It's when your friend lets you know that you accidentally offended someone else in the group.
It's when my friend drove me all the way home in the middle of the night, only to find out that I didn't even have that house key.
It's when you shotgun for 8 hours on a drive back from Minnesota.
So here is my question to myself first and foremost, and to everyone. Which one of us here are willing to take the bullet for our brother or sister? Because within each of us lies the seed to become one of the next Ansar. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.